show you how to blend and layer Daydream Apothecary paint, but the first thing that I need to do is prep my surface, and so I'm going to clean it really well and allow it to dry. Once it's dried, I'm going to take Deadly Nightshade and I am going to put 2 layers of this color on the entire piece. I allow a few hours in between each coat. I'm just going to allow this to dry overnight before I go in and start blending it. And the colors that I will be using to blend will be Comfort Zone, Forest Rain, and Garden of Eden. Now, I'm going to spray this area lightly with water and I'm going to outline the Forest Rain, which is a darker green, in all the areas where I want some darker shading. One thing I want to talk about with Daydream Apothecary paint is the fact that it is a chalk and clay based paint. And so it's a little bit different than some of your chalk based paints because it has a higher content of clay in it. What that means is that it is going to hold on to moisture a little bit longer and it's going to be a little bit easier to wet distress. And so that is why I allowed it to sit overnight to dry, because when I start applying this paint and then I start blending it and adding water, I don't want it to reactivate as easily. And so if I let that base layer sit overnight, it is going to start drying. Now this paint does require a top coat, so it doesn't mean that if I let it sit for long enough, it's not going to reactivate. It just allows it to dry properly so that way the clay is fully dried and it doesn't reactivate as easily. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to take Garden of Eden and I'm going to take that over top in the center, and then I'm going to add some Forest Rain anywhere that I want that dark. And then I'm going to take Comfort Zone and I'm going to lightly add it and do circles in the center for a highlight. I am going to mist it a little bit with water as I go through, but you do not want to use a lot of water with this paint. As with any blending and any time that I'm applying paint, I always use a light hand. So make sure that you're using a light hand. You don't need to be mashing this paint on top of each other. Just lightly add it, and that's why I mist it with water to allow it to kind of glide a little bit easier. Once I have added all the paint in the areas that I want, I'm taking my brand new Crys'Dawna brush, and what I like to use this for multiple things, but this is one of the reasons why I love this brush. I mist it with water, and then I lightly, with a light hand, go over the entire space that I want to blend with. I'm going horizontal, I'm going vertical. You'll see me kind of go in little areas, go diagonal. This brush is perfect for that. And the key to this kind of blend is where you are laying down your paint. So if you didn't notice, I outlined with a dark, the middle was kind of your middle of the road green, and then the center, very center, was the lightest color, which was a white in this case. And that really helps. So if you want to add some dark in certain areas, you can go ahead and just go back over it with, what I'm doing right now is I'm going back over some of the areas with the Forest Rain. And then I will lightly, very lightly with my Crys'Dawna brush, blend that out by going in different directions. Before I blend out that Forest Rain, I am going to take a microfiber cloth and clean off as much of the excess paint as I can, so that way it doesn't add any of the lighter paint in there and we're just focusing on smoothing out that Forest Rain. I also wanted to let you know that the more I use Daydream Apothecary paint, the more I realize that using dry brushes are the best way to go so that you're not adding excess water. So the next colors I'm going to do is my brand new colors, Aura and Spirit Adrift, and we will use some Scuba Girl. So I'm going to mist the very bottom where I am going to blend, and I'm adding Aura as my darker purple. And again, the brush that I am applying all of my paint on is dry. And then the Crys'Dawna brush is dry. The only moisture I have is the moisture from the paint and the moisture from my mister bottle. Over the years when you paint and you use different paints, you realize what each one likes the best. And usually a clay-based paint, because clay does hold on to a lot of moisture, if you have too much moisture, it is going to pull back your paint too much. So we did our Aura all over. I'm going to use Scuba Girl as my middle of the road purple, and I'm going to apply that in different areas. And then I'm going to take my Spirit Adrift, and I'm going to add that in the center, just like we did with the greens, but now we're taking the purples and we're going to blend these in together. But again, like I said, if you're having problems with either this paint or a clay-based paint or a mixture, a hybrid of clay and chalk, you may want to consider not using quite as much water to blend, or if you're using water, only use a fine mister and mist it very lightly. Don't oversaturate your piece with water unless you're wanting to pull back layers, which is something that I will show you here in a little bit. But we are adding the lighter color, and then again, we will mist everything, and then we will use the Crys'Dawna brush to smooth it all out. Now that everything's blended, I want to show you why I use Deadly Nightshade on the bottom. So I'm going to mist everything, and I am going to use a little bit more water and a little bit more pressure and go through everything. So that way in some areas I can pull back just slightly from the colors that we just put on to expose some of that Deadly Nightshade underneath. And you're going to start seeing the bottom lip, it looks a little bit more purple blue. Some of the areas look a little bit more bluish. That's because I misted it and then I put a little bit more pressure with my brush so that I could pull it back, and now you have some of that blue pulling through as well. You can see right here where some of that blue paint is kind of showing through just a little bit more after I did that. Now, if you want to add different colors in different areas, you can, and we're going to do the aura just like we did with the Forest Rain. You're going to dab it on there and then make sure that your brush is clean, or clean, wipe it off with the excess paint. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean. And then I'm going to just kind of smooth it and blend it out into our paint. The door off and I blended the body the same exact way, and now I am putting the door back on. Everything is completely dried. I'm going to do a dry brush with my blended brush with the purple on it, and that is I'm just going to go over that raised area with that brush to add some purple right there, just to add a little bit more dimension. So this next part you don't have to do if you don't want to. I did want to expose a little bit more of that blue underneath and just distress it a little bit. And so I'm taking a super fine rad pad. This is about a 500 to 600 grit, and I'm going to just go over the entire piece. This helps smooth it out, distress it a little bit if you want. And then I'm going to take a microfiber cloth and I am going to go over it to get the excess dust off. So that way I can use Dreamcoat and I can seal this piece. Now I know someone's going to ask me, what did you do on the sides? I blended the sides exactly like I blended the front. Exactly. And so now it's ready for a top coat. I am going to top coat it with Dreamcoat. You can see it kind of richens the colors up. And then the last step for this will be me adding some gold gilding wax to that little emblem in the center, just to add a little bit more character. And then this piece is completely done. I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope that you will try this blending technique, and everything I use is in the description below. And if you guys need anything else, you know where to find me. Happy creating, and I will see you guys later. Bye.
Hey darling, can I tell you what's been on my mind? Sick and tired of the 9 to 5 in the city life. Hey darling, we could get out of town, see the beautiful world around, wanna see it now. Pack our bags and get in that car, leave a little note and we'll drive real far. Let's get out, we can leave this city, let's drive to the open air. Yeah, the countryside is so pretty.